After 7, this is Morning Express, and welcome back. In case you're joining us now, in studio we have Professor Wajakoya and Kevin Osido, and this is the way it is. Just before we took the break, you had your opening comments and remarks on where we are as a country. But we do know the president is now, just like he had mentioned earlier, that after all the dust settles, he's willing to, outstretch his arm and have dialogue, in quotes. But what is that dialogue all about? Let's listen into what the president has had to say so far as he calls now on the opposition to embrace dialogue.
Our country is in dire need of unity. And the chief unifier is you, Your Excellency. You're the commander-in-chief, but also you're the chief unifier. Utulete sisi wote pamoja. Siasa imeisha. Si ni kweli? Siasa imeisha. Come, let us work together, Your Excellency. Tumeona akina mama hapa wamekuja kabila zote. Hii kanisa ni kanisa ya kabila zote. Si ni kweli? Ile uchungu mama Mkikuyu anasikia, sa ile mtoto wake hawezi pata chakula, ni sawa na ile uchungu mama Mjaluo anasikia. The hopes of the Kamba are not opposed to the dreams of the Luhya. We are one people, and we need and we want to remain united as a country. Nairobi hii, sisi tunajua, Nairobi hakuna kabila tofauti, hakuna shida ya Mjaluo na ya Mkikuyu na ya Mkamba. Nairobi kabila ni mbili, tajiri na maskini.
Jukumu langu la kwanza ni amani kwa wananchi wote. Ya pili ni umoja ya Wakenya iwe msingi ya maendeleo yale ambayo tunatafuta. Na hata kwa wale ambao tulikuwa tunashindana na wao, si hoja kushindana, kwa sababu lazima watu washindane, na tutashindana kwa sababu taifa la Kenya ni demokrasia, na tukiwa demokrasia lazima tushindane. Lakini hatushindani kwa sababu ya lugha ile unaongea, hatushindani kwa sababu ya rangi yako, kabila lako. Tuashindana kwa mawazo, na lazima kutakuwa mshindi na kutakuwa ule ambaye ameshindwa. Lakini kama Wakenya tumeshinda zote, na jukumu letu baada ya mashindano, hata timu mbili za mpira zikishindana, warudi pamoja, washerehekea pamoja, wafanya kazi pamoja. Na mimi nawaomba hata hawa ambao tulishindana na wao, hakuna haja sasa ya kusumbua mwananchi. Mwananchi ametimiza yake. Sisi tuje sasa tukae na tupange yale ambaye tunataka kutendea Wakenya.
All right, so that's what the president had to say. And Prof, let me start with you. Is it too little too late for the president to be sending out an olive branch to the opposition, given the fact that this is now after the Supreme Court has, given their ruling on what they think, and really swearing in now is the only thing that Kenya is waiting for us to say that that particular period is over?
I think the president should have been very sincere. If I was him, I would have said the following. I would have apologized to the people of this nation, and I would have condemned the sycophants who have divided this nation left, right, and center. We've had people who have made statements that are so reckless. And if the president does not address that issue, address the likes of Duale and what have you, this recklessness from people like Murkomen, people will not take the president very seriously. And secondly, the people who should be addressing this issue of reconciliation besides the president himself are not the likes of Sakaja. Sakaja is a sycophant. The president should have actually left the church to do opening remarks to usher him in to come and speak to Kenyans. But if you take the very, very people who have been abusing Kenyans, the very, very people who have been dividing the nation by recklessness, reckless statements, then do you think that a person like me will take that seriously? The answer is no. But however, having said that, let the president come out and reach out to the real people, not those elements of emancipation, or those people have failed in the elections, particularly like in Western Province and Nyanza and even the coast, those who actually crossed because they had failed in nominations. Those should not be the people to be ushered in the new government. So my take is, yes, the president could have a sincere acknowledgement of the fact that things are not good, but sycophants should be put behind the scenes.
All right. Kevin, do you agree that that apology would add weight to the president's call for peace? Because, again, if it is not read to be genuine, unfortunately, in this country, we have what we'd call political statements, things that you say in public purely just to endear people to you, but we're not quite sure how meaning you are about that statement. Do you think that is a political statement, or is the president genuine in trying to call the opposition now to, you know, mend bridges and let's have a peaceful transition?
This is not the first time these kind of statements are being spoken out to us Kenyans. And for me, a sincere apology would also come in with the institutions of governance, because you note that, for instance, for NASA supporters, one of their biggest enemy right now, as you would say, which is in fact one of the reasons why they are insisting to have their memorial tomorrow, is the police. And my advice to His Excellency the President and his handlers would be that if he is, for example, moving to areas where he expects to meet the population, like especially in areas like Nairobi, because Nairobi has been one of the worst hit areas, this kind of police brutality and of course the business and economic interference when people demonstrate. So that would then, in my view, present the opportunity even for people like the IG and others to come and sincerely speak on behalf of the police and apologize and indicate that there are things we did which, in our honest opinion and view, were not very good, because all of us are Kenyans. And then the president would speak. But you see again that this is, as I said earlier on, is not the first time His Excellency the President is coming up to say we are one people, These are things that keep happening, and a few days after those statements are made, you see the opposite of what people expect, because as Mheshimiwa Sakaja rightfully said, he is the Commander-in-Chief of the Kenya Defense Forces. And beyond that, he is the appointee of all these other people, of course vetted by different sets of houses, like the Senate, the National Assembly. The police IG is a state officer. He also needs to present himself and speak for Kenyans, because there is a huge section of Kenyans who feel that the police is really one of the people that we do not want to see. And you see that happening even in the hinter places of this country, where people just feel that the way the police are behaving in Nairobi is the same way the police are behaving in almost all the other parts of the country, which indeed is not the case. So this kind of platforms, in my view, would present opportunities for different state officers to come and also share their, grievances, so, quote to quote, so that people can be able to actually resonate with what statements are being made, so that you see the practice and the theory actually being in tandem with each other, and then we provide that platform even for the citizens to be able to engage. Because yes, in church, because the president is there, you can say, ule mama Mkikuyu, ule kijana Mjaluo, but that is because His Excellency the President is there. Once you get into your convoy and you move off, you never know how these people are living. But again, Kenyans are people who've been known to be very united. We only divided when it comes to political narratives and, of course, political allegiances. But otherwise, in our day-to-day running as Kenyans, we are very united people. And therefore, it is not fair for politicians, who are the people who keep dividing us on a daily basis for their own selfish interests, to be the people talking about unity and reconciliation. I think it is a joke, in my view.
All right. Prof, your thoughts on the way forward and options for the opposition. They seem to, right now be saying, initially they had said that as President Uhuru Kenyatta is being sworn in, they would also be swearing in Raila Odinga. But as per one of the principals, Mudavadi said, anything that they will do, despite the fact that they will not recognize the president, will be constitutional. Now, we do know that it's not constitutional for them to swear in Raila Odinga. Is that a backtrack? And what options do they have? They seem to be making statements and sometimes withdrawing and backtracking. Do you think that's injuring the opposition's strength and impetus?
NASA has lost credibility completely. A man is a man who goes out there, and when you promise to do something, do it. If you promise me that you're going to beat me during the daytime, like what Fred Gumo used to say, do it. You don't have to retreat or to retract, because you've put a lot of hope in your followers. And they're following you and saying, well, now we are going to have our own president. And then at the end of the day, you come up and they say, I am not going to be. So you can as well pack and go and stay where you're supposed to. This has been a very strong message that has really sent a very high kind of threshold into the minds of the government. But now that they have come up themselves without any kind of intimidation or coercion by saying that we are not going to swear in Raila, that itself has killed Raila completely. And secondly, if they were trying to borrow a leaf from what happened in West Africa, what happened to the two heads of states in West Africa, Yahya Jammeh on the other side and Kantara the other side, those were legitimate issues where the opposition had won the elections. And the superpowers had actually come in to recognize. And in one sense, Yahya Jammeh had actually admitted that he had actually lost the elections, putting the international community on a pedestal, whereby they said, well, this was genuine, the international observers did the same. But in Kenya, it's the other way around. The elections were done, and there was the winner, even if there was a dispute. Another election was done, there was the winner, where one had actually retracted. What is the mentality? What is the point of coming up and saying, now you're going, if they swear in the president, I also want to be sworn in? That was also some kind of crocodile tears, in my opinion. I'm not saying that the opposition is bad or what have you, but to me, it was actually flat indignation to the law of this country, violation of the constitution, and that was treasonable. So it's a good thing that Raila has come to realize that it was not something that he will take on, and therefore I give him some kind of support on that one.
All right, Kevin, options for the opposition.
Options for the opposition. One, I think unity is still an option. They really have to come forward. Of course, lots of the grievances that NASA has had are quite, in my view, legit, in the sense that they've talked about equity issues. They've talked about the desire for creation of youth employment opportunities. Those are very serious concerns, which, in my view, resonate with almost every Kenyan. But probably the strategy in which they have employed to pass their message is much more of one which raises concerns and questions, especially when lives have to be lost. The third thing, in my view, is talking too much, doing very little, or sometimes nothing, as Prof has rightfully said, and we're in agreement, because when you say that you're going to swear in, does it mean that you did not really look seriously around the constitutional implications?
For making the statement.
Exactly. And who made those kind of statements, and then how do you retract? Because not, again, like as we've said before, that NASA has a huge amount of followers, and I don't know what amount of discouragement or disenfranchisement these people are going to face when these kind of things happen. Because as we already said, there is part of this country that is going to be in celebratory mood tomorrow. But the other half, almost the other part, would be in a much more of a mourning mode. What happens next? And then if, for instance, you went ahead and swore in the former Prime Minister at either Jacaranda Grounds or at Uhuru Park, then where do you drive to? Once you have taken the oath of office, do you go to State House, or do you go back to Karen, or are you going to drive to
So would it be a statement that possibly, again, we could analyze and say maybe it was a political statement at that time, which maybe had not been thought through, but does that necessarily slow the impetus for the opposition, because they still have, in their opinion, valid points as to why they do not recognize the government?
And that is where now this calls for unity, which in fact should have been done in March or in April of this year, just right before elections come in, because Kenya has to move on. But how Kenya is going to move on is the most important debate that we should be having. Because yes, there are calls for dialogue, there are calls for unity. The church leaders are saying we need to create more spaces, you know, for prime minister and executive chief ministers and all those things. Is that the kind of solution that the Kenyan back in the village, where I come from, where you come from, those people who are probably watching us from Mandera, what exactly do they want to see? Because these are people who wake up, and a Kenyan's most common need, the most primary need, is food, housing, and shelter. All these other issues, in my view, are shenanigans which affect the way the Kenyan wants to live his or her life. And so, in my view, every statement that a politician makes should be about Kenya Kwanza. this Kenya that you want, what kind of Kenya do you want? Do you want a Kenya where half of it will be celebrating and the other half, or the other people would be mourning over and over again? Because in 2013, note again, that there are people who are told accept and move on. And for the next 4.5 years up to now, they said, yes, you are told to accept and move on, and we have been accepting and moving on. And when these things happened, when the campaigns were at the peak and top of it, the former Prime Minister said, nendeni mukapige kura, mengine muniachie. So those are accountability statements that people will be watching, and every day for governance, people like myself and others will be asking. When you stand there and make points and you tell people, because elections are also both a leadership, political, and a governance process. When you say go and vote and the rest leave it for me, what does that mean? You have had a good manifesto. You have had very good statements that have made people come to your venues, even without being coerced by anyone. They have given you ultimate and their zealous support to be able to be their president. And then suddenly, they remember that you told them, go and vote and the rest leave for me. Was it for the loss of lives? Was it for you to just want to make statements which do not therefore encourage them? So I think for the rest of once His Excellency the President is sworn in, we'll also begin to look at how does he carry the country forward, because all these are options that NASA has. And so for me, I don't think, because again, NASA has very many elected leaders. What exactly do their followers and their electorate communicate to them, and how do they pass on this to the coalition leaders? Because it's something worth looking at, Michael.
All right, Prof, the call for unity by the President and Jubilee as a whole would be empty and pure political statements and rhetoric unless there are proper structures, there are proper issues that are put on the table to address that unity. What are those structures that need to be in place? What are those elements that possibly need to be brought on the table to unite this country? Because just saying, let's, be united, it would be like a husband and wife or two people who have had a quarrel and say, no, let's just forget the quarrel. But sometimes you can't just forget.
First of all, he has to fire the chief of police.
The IG?
The IG should be fired.
Why?
He should also, I will tell you why. He should fire everyone who has been tainted in this election. Anyone who has taken a role in coming out to do what other Kenyans would not have wanted. Look at the police, for example. A police officer throwing stones at a motorcade in the broad day view, daylight.
Lights and cameras and,
yes.
and citizens.
And then the Inspector General of Police does not issue a statement. We need to know why. The Kaparos should be fired. These other parastatal bodies that have been used to whip people's money should also be disbanded. And any other leader who has been mentioned adversely should go. Sycophants should be let go. The president should come out very clean and say, look, I am the president of this country. I have the seal and power of this country. I am going to do the following. He should become an economic dictator, and he should also dictate stuff that should be for the benefit of this particular country. He should look at he should learn, for examples from what has happened in Zimbabwe. He should borrow a leaf from there. He should also borrow a leaf from what happened between Akufo and Atta Mills in Ghana, where the two men came and said, okay, you've won narrowly, but I will support you, or we shall sit together for the benefit of this country. But if you are going to have the same music, same players, same lyrics, then these so-called tenets of unity will not work. He should not also just look at the opposition and say, let us talk. The opposition has shown him that they cannot talk. They have defied him. They are not recognizing him. He should actually come up and say, this is the way. I'm going to do it this way, and I want the economics to come in, human rights to come in, but the following people should be fired.
All right, Kevin, what are those things that the president should be putting on the table as he calls for unity? Maybe will give him that he has called for unity, but maybe over time he should be saying, yes, let us stand united as a country, but this is what we are negotiating. There needs to be an admission. Sure. There needs to be an admission that, yes, as a country, we're not united right now. You can't just say, come, let us work together. Yet, you're not admitting that there's a reason why we did not work together in the first place.
Indeed, Michael. And in fact, you know that the first term of President Uhuru Kenyatta is one that was characterized by serious ills. In fact, the corruption levels hit the apex of the roof. And you note that there are lots of people who, in fact, now, some of them are governors, and there are not serious steps that were taken to prosecute them. And that, therefore, presents the aspect of functioning institutions like the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. The Prof has talked about NCIC, issues to do with the unity. Of course, people think it's about hate speech and that it's just a hate speech commission, but I think if the commission is asking for prosecutorial powers so that it can be able to perform effectively, then that needs to be given. But again, I think that the chair of the commission should not be a politician, because then when even you stand on before the cameras, before TV, people will tell your kind of narrative and they will speak about what, they'll be able to tell that you're supporting only this side or the other side of your statement. And so for me, yes, dialogue, unity for His Excellency the President, but again, we all know that this is not the first time that we are finding ourselves here again. 2007 happened. We had the Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation process. There are reports that were brought forward, reports like the TGRC report. We will be looking forward to His Excellency the President, because I think during his first term in office, he received that report and he made very serious commitments to be able to ensure that portions of that report are implemented. And that report, therefore, captures serious issues that resonate with the expectations of Kenyans. For example, things to do with youth employment, and you talk about Agenda 4 issues. Youth employment in this country. Every year, our institutions of higher learning churn out almost 800,000 to 1 million young people. And the formal sector can only accommodate about 56,000 of 800,000. That leaves about 744,000 out there on an annual basis. This is really quite unprecedented. And when we talk about the youth bill, not just for Africa, but for Kenya, as we also look forward to Agenda 2063, which is the AU, more or less, a vision. But what does that therefore mean for the young people of this country? And every day you see them running on the streets following this politician and that politician, because these are people who are quite energetic. They are looking for opportunities for economic and socio-cultural development of this country. So His Excellency the President needs to really begin to have craft teams that are going to respond not to the political issues that are only going to respond to the selfish interests of the politicians, but ultimately for the interests of the Kenyans, because this country cannot move forward unless all of us are part of that ship. And how that is going to happen is really up to the sailor who is going to be the president. Of course, you will have some storm within the ocean, within the lake, to be able to rock the boat, but how you're going to ensure that it moves forward, that, for me, I think, is what Kenyans are looking forward from the president.
All right. Prof, looking at President Uhuru Kenyatta now, there are two ways he can handle his presidency, given that this is his last term. There are those who say he has nothing to lose and, you know, can literally, like you say, fire anybody he wants. Politically speaking, he already is president and can have an opportunity to leave a legacy. However, it could also be left to him now to just, you know, let things be as they have been. And those who feel that they're not satisfied with him, shauri yao. What would your advice to the president be, given that he has a 5-year term now, once he's sworn in tomorrow, either to leave a legacy or to forever be remembered for the wrong reasons?
First of all, the president now knows that he has had a team, in State House and in Harambee House, and so is his deputy for 5 years. And he knows where he has failed, and he knows where he has gained. He knows the kind of intelligence report he receives every morning, those he has relied on and those he has not relied on. The best thing he can do is to start it fresh. First of all, clean the State House of those brokers. And I keep on using this word because that is true. Clean the State House of brokers. Ruto should also clean his house of those brokers who are there. And probably with what has been in the public domain, that is these brokers who have shielded the president from actually opening up. Is these brokers who have come in to emasculate whatever they want to for purposes of gaining whatever. So cleaning State House is okay. Having a new team coming in and looking also at the diaspora. We have so many Kenyan technocrats who are actually advising governments outside this country. He should borrow a leaf from Museveni. He should borrow a leaf from Kagame. You should borrow leave from South African president, the first president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, and usher in Kenyans with brains who can come. I'm not saying that Kenyans within Kenya are not brains, but people who have been outside the box and who have seen economics, how economics work and what have you. You should bring in these people. You should actually do away with the legacy of those who have brought him down, and probably bring in a few wise men from the Kibaki administration. I still insist on this because during Kibaki's time, things were not as bad as they are right now. But if you take the .coms and surround yourselves with the .coms, what else do they know other than having this all the time? Bring in wise men, sit with them, and let them guide you. You need also the pastors and the religious leaders to come in. You also need those mukokoteni pushers to come around. And Moi was very good in this. When I was in the intelligence, I learned a lot of things in a way that Moi could even reach out to those people who was roasting maize and to pick up information other than picking up information from here. So he should revamp his security operations, do away with these intelligence committees, and usher in people who have the best interest of this country.
All right.
And secondly, he should also come in and pinpoint at people that he can work with, rather than those who have been slotted in by the Public Service Commission, who have been shortlisted for interviews and what have you. Let him pick out. Let him come out and say, I want that man here. I want the other one here. Let them have a formal discussion and let him see who is loyal to the Kenyans rather than those who are going to.
All right, and well, let me just take a few calls. But before that, there is a tweet here from Natasha who says, Professor, you say that he should kill the .coms and hire the wise from Kibaki. Are you saying that the .coms are not wise? I'll give you a chance to answer that in just not too long from now. But let me take a call from Dan in Dagoretti. Good morning, Dan. Thank you for calling. To your comment or question.
Good morning.
Morning.
Now, I want to say this. First, I'm happy to see Professor Wajakoya is a great... Now, I want to say this, Ian. I cannot be able to get the difference between the state and the Jubilee. And this is one thing the president... Hello?
Yes, go on.
One thing that the president has completely refused to agree. Because if you are able to differentiate between the state and the Jubilee as a party, then you'll be able to see what Kenyans are looking for. Look, you cannot talk about independent institutions when we know the 2010 Constitution tried to create these institutions, but the state, the presidency is busy manipulating them. That's why people cannot accept what is coming out of IBC. That's why you can see what Kaparo is doing is actually to defend the existing systems. That's why you can see Wabukara cannot work independently. That's why you see the comments coming out of Kohome are more or less like somebody speaking on behalf of Jubilee. And therefore, I think if the president has to tackle the issues that the country is facing, let him start dealing with the real issues. We've been dealing with the hardware. The president has to start dealing with the software. Because if we continue talking about the hardware, building roads and all that, we leave alone the issues that are affecting this country, the software. You cannot be able to talk about why we have two communities land in this country for the last 54 years. We're not able to go anywhere, whether you went to Kisumu and build roads everywhere. Mike, I'll tell you, you have to deal with the issues called the software if we have to deal with the issues that the country is facing.
Thank you very much, Dan in Dagoretti, for calling. Let's take another call. And thank you for calling. Good morning. And to your comment or question?
Hello?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. To your comment or question? Hello? Paul, we can hear you. Go right ahead. Okay, I think we have a problem with network there. Yes, Paul?
Yes, no, I'm commenting.
Yeah, huh?
I'm listening to you people, and I think you're helping all the people, the president.
Unfortunately, we're not getting you very clearly. I think there's a network issue there, Paul. Could you repeat your comment? All right.
It's very unfair for you. I mean, the guy is there who
Sorry, we'll have to disconnect the call because of the quality. Maybe try calling again, Paul. We just not seem to be able to hear you, and it seems like a network problem. So you can give us a call and let us know what your comments are. Let me also just sample a few of your comments that are coming in via social media. As Professor, you answer that question in regards to the comment you made regarding the .com. Should the president do away completely with the younger generation?
Actually, let me put it very, very, very clearly. What I meant is, You cannot disband the older generation from your administration. You cannot surround yourself with people with no experience, even if they're young in their own way. Mm-hmm. Of course, the Constitution does not discriminate against who is who where. Mm-hmm. But the dot-coms are good, they have a good mindset, but they need experience to run things. If you look at the Congress in the United States, you look at the Senate in the US, you look at the conservative politicians and the Labour Party politicians in the UK, these are a group of wise men who advise the government on what ought to be done or what have you. Mm. The dot-com, yes, they are good, but what experience do they have? What experience do they have?
But they can bring on board ideas.
They can bring on board
experience, but they may have ideas that are pertinent. And again, they form the bigger percentage of voters.
That is okay.
And citizens.
That's fine. I'm an academic, and actually, nobody should actually dispense of my background in education and ICT and what have you. But my experience is as follows. If I'm in a law firm, would you want me to take a student or an intern who has just come from Kenya School of Law and send him to the Supreme Court? He needs to learn the ropes. He needs that experience. Experience is power, not education. And that's why many academics who have been given bigger positions in various governments have failed because of lack of experience. But however, that does not mean that we should actually do away with them holistically. What I'm trying to say is the digital group should also be counterchecked by the wiser men so that they can actually tally.
There needs to be a blend, a mix of...
They should be a blend, not just because we are now doing away with the gumos and we are bringing in these guys who will... That's why maybe things have crooked up in State House. Things are not moving...
With the digital age. All right, it is now just about 7 minutes to 8 o'clock. It's time for us to release KTN Home for Life and Style to begin. But right here on KTN News, we continue with this conversation. So for those of us watching on KTN Home, it's time for us to say goodbye and wish you all a fantastic day. Life and Style begins. But KTN News, we carry on with this conversation. Kevin, do you agree that maybe there needs to be a bigger percentage of the experience as opposed to the dot-com?
In fact, for me, if you look at the transition stages of any population, it's something that you cannot wish away. And we therefore bring in the aspects of the expectations of the X generation, the Y generation, and a mix of the X and the Y. Because then you note that every year and things keep changing, because if you brought in the wise men, the group of the wise men, as Prof calls them, then you are, of course, at risk of losing almost 60% of your populace. Because under those who are below the age of 35 years, for example, for the case of Kenya, we form almost 68% of this population. And if you only picked a small group of those who are like the group of wise men, as Prof is saying again, then you actually risk losing the bigger part of it, because look at it this way. Who drives the economy of this country? It is these people, these young people. Who does what we call the engine of support for economic development? It is these young people. But that is not just meant to be at the hardware level, where hardware is pushing the mkokotenis and being able to be doing the panel beating and all that. No, they also need to sit at the table of decision-making, policy-making, and that table where then their ideas can be able to be brought in to make the policies that we are talking about. Because governments don't just run in vacuums. Governance people like myself will say that there are systems and institutions. And for you to be able to run these systems effectively and efficiently, then you need proper decisions. And those decisions are made by people who actually understand the implications, and they can be able to do a historical projection also of what worked then.
And that's where experience is coming in.
And that's where experience is coming in. But you also need people who will be able to present the other perspective of why it didn't work then, because probably it's an experience of what was unable to perform then. And this young person has the response of why it can be able. And we've seen very entrepreneurial young Kenyans. For example, the people who brought in M-Pesa. Every day I watch KTN News, I watch KTN, and I see innovative ideas by young people. You know, someone being able to even put up a helicopter. Those are people that really we cannot be able to wish away. And that is why, for the sake of Kenya, our policies keep transitioning and moving on every year, even our education system, because initially it was so theoretical. Today, I think there are lots of changes in the curriculum to be able to ensure that all these ideas present the mix that Prof and I and all of us are agreeing upon. But we also need to note that governance and politics and leadership keep changing every day, that what worked yesterday may not necessarily work today. But of course, young people also need experience, and there is nowhere you will be able to gain that experience other than being hands-on and on-job. And that is why even within the 15 years, today you don't see papers asking young people to present their CVs only when they are up to 15 years. It starts from 3 to 5 years, because that is also a review that was done by the Ministry of Labor. And as a young person, I am happy about it, because then people who graduate from universities can do internship, can do volunteer work, and in a span of 5 years, they now have the resolute experience to be able to execute certain responsibilities.
All right, and that answers Naliaka's question, who was asking, how do we get experience when we are not given the opportunity? And of course, it becomes again the question of a chicken and egg, because one comes before the other. So let's pick a call from Roslyn in Rongai. Good morning, Roslyn. Thank you for calling. To your question or your comment?
Good morning.
Morning, Roslyn.
I am still awaiting the program with you people.
Okay.
And I have been following what has been happening even before the election on the 6th up to now. My observation is, I don't know whether we are living in the same country and what we are, and in relation to what we are communicating. Citizen in Kenya, I have seen presidents come and presidents go.
Okay, unfortunately, Roslyn, I'm missing some of your sentences. Could you repeat that, please?
I'm saying, I'm really wondering if we are living in the same country with people who come to make some comments.
Okay.
I have seen some presidents come and presidents go. They come in a platform of giving promises, and they don't fulfill. In 2002, we saw Kibaki came, and we really embraced him because we expected some change. I was really waiting for him to do something in those sides of Turkana, Samburu, where we have people always, really, we have a calamity with those people. But after his term, the first term, nothing happened. Even up to now, the roads are not made. And anybody who comes there to talk, they say there's decentralization of the government.
Okay.
What decentralization of the government in relation to the lives of people when we have the national government, which cannot do what it is supposed to do? And then now, I am seeing there people are calling for unity. When you call for unity, you call unity with the people who are full stomach and the others with empty stomach. For example, when we talk about Raila represents 6 million people from other counties who have not experienced fully the national government of what is doing in the other counties. For example, go to those sides of Central Province, you will see a very good road. When you go to the other side, go to Western Kenya, go to Nyanza, go to Northeastern, now where we are talking about, there are no completely there are no roads. We have hospitals, the so-called the government hospitals, but there are no facilities.
All right.
What come to talk about now?
Okay.
What is this unity? Me, I want people to come and address. If it is about politics, can't we have healthy politics where people can come on the table and say, okay, you have not gotten the cake, we have the cake. But this time, because I've taken this second term as a president, I'm going to do APC in those particular areas where I feel they are marginalized.
All right, Roslyn.
This is my statement.
Okay. All right, Roslyn. Let me move on now to Joseph in Busia. Good morning, Joseph. Joseph in Busia, go right ahead with your comment. Yes, Joseph.
Now, my comment is that now that the election is over, Raila, the opposition should concede the defeat and join his colleague, His Excellency, as he has requested him, so that the Kenyans can feel at large that actually politics cannot divide us. It's a matter of difference in ideas, but we should all have a common mwananchi at hand.
Okay.
Then, hello?
Yes, carry on.
Yeah, these senators, governors, and MPs allied to opposition. Those are the people who are trying to cheat the opposition leader because they know very well he was defeated. But for them, they are trying to look at a situation where in their areas where they have been voted in, if they don't support Raila, then they will be voted out comes next election. But the reality, they know what happened.
Okay.
So my humble request lastly, Raila should just approach His Excellency, and if possible, let His Excellency also appoint people from the opposition areas into the cabinet. That is my humble request.
Thank you very much, Joseph in Busia. And we need to wind up now because of time. Prof, the lady Roslyn, who was calling from Rongai, of course, bringing in some concerns there. And the perception, whether it is real or not, is that there are those who have what she terms as full stomachs and others with an empty stomach. And this is not just to do with food. It's really to do with resources and equity and also inclusivity. And that is one question that has not really been given the attention it needs in terms of how is it going to be addressed when we're talking about unity.
I think my friend Osido addressed those issues in his first remarks, which I totally agreed with. He talked of distributive equity and what have you. But coming to what Roslyn has said, which is very genuine, I would like the president to take that issue very seriously and also to find out from his policymakers on how we can reduce counties from 47 counties and draw the boundaries to the former provinces, that we become a federal state and counties within, or devolution within states. There's nothing wrong with retaining counties, but counties within the borders of a federal government in terms of reduced governance, in terms of from 47 governors to 7 governors, the way it happens in Nigeria. Now, secondly, let the president also look outside the box, as I've always said. Let him look at Cuba. Why is it that Cuba, even though right now communism has eaten in it, it is still surviving? It still have got affordable Medicare, if not free health care, where every street in Cuba has got 2 doctors on duty, on standby. Free education in Cuba, proper collection and accountability of taxation, proper infrastructure. Rather than coming into this rhetoric, nitawafanyia, nitawaletea barabara. Only during election is when you see tractors going to some counties.
Some areas.
That kind of rhetoric is seen ripe in Ruto, it's seen ripe in the president, and that is actually taking us back to where it was before. Issues of bribery, no accountability. You come with the tractors, but you're not accounting for those tractors or where they came from or whether there was a special budget for that. And what they're supposed to do. That kind of whimming and whining Kenyans should stop once and for good. Let's go towards an era whereby election just becomes a thing of the past, like in European countries and most of the African countries, whereby people wake up to say, oh, there have been elections, I've voted, what have you. This, Kenya has to be revamped. We have actually to turn the economy upside down and usher in new policies, especially on healthcare, education, and Matiang'i is doing very well on education. Thank you very much, and I congratulate you. We look into the infrastructure in terms of industrialization, employment, and opening up economic structures, and training facilities, industrial and vocational training to the younger generation. Then we are talking. But if you come into these issues of president making roadside statements that I'm going to do that way, then you're becoming a corrupt person and you trying just to go through what we are trying to run away from. All right, Kevin, as we close and your closing remarks, Joseph said that, well, the opposition needs to concede defeat and prove to Kenyans that politics cannot divide us. Is that a solution?
Well, concession as it is, or as it were, in my view, given the political context of Kenya, is really difficult. Because right from the middle, you have the country almost torn into half. And I think he's one of the people who said Raila has 6 million plus followers. Those are people who you will not just go and tell them, concede, because Right Honorable Raila Odinga is an individual, he's one person, and you note that he said, yeah, aliambiwa, he should not be sworn in. Now, who is this speaking this, and how do you therefore carry this message to be able to bring on board all these other 6 million plus followers? That is something that, as we said earlier on still, the president, as he takes office in his second term, he needs to take note of these followers of the Right Honorable Prime Minister. But again, like all the callers almost said and agreed with us, call for unity is not enough. That unity has to be seen to be unifying Kenyans in a manner that it responds to serious, devilish questions that Kenyans keep asking every day. And those questions are very simple. Security, anti-corruption, food, shelter, education, proper infrastructure, which then presents the call that came in from Roslyn, that the president, and I agree with her because at County Governance Watch, where I serve, we engage with devolution on a daily basis. And in his first term, the president spent much more time fighting and quarreling with governors as opposed to ensuring that services are delivered to the people. And I am hoping that as elections came on board, we saw very serious progress taking place towards entrenching devolution and making devolution work to be able to respond to Kenyans' questions or needs. Yeah. But now in his second term, because his presidency is not just for the national office. It has to be seen also responding to the needs of Kenyans on the ground. And this is his opportunity now to ensure that devolution works and that people will be able to say that indeed we had challenges when we started, but as we move on, things are working, and that also presents the aspect of accountability from the citizens to their leaders. That devolution in Mandera or in Siaya or in Bungoma or in Meru or in Laikipia or in Nyeri cannot just be seen to be working because the president is visiting or not visiting. It has also to go down into my elected MCA. What is his role insofar as representation, legislation, and oversight is concerned? And the governor, as the CEO of the county, how is a county legislation and policies resonating with Schedule 4 functions of both national and county governments? And how is he ensuring that my challenges and my needs as a citizen at the grassroots level are actually addressed?
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We'll have to wind up there because of time. That's Professor Wajakoya and Kevin Osido for joining us this morning. Thank you. That is the way it is. It is now 9 minutes after 8. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we have stories that are making headlines. But also, Robin Toskin, today being a Monday, is going to be letting us know what's been happening in the sporting world. So do stay with us right here on KTN News. We take a short break. We'll be right back.